In this exploration of the trauma blog, I wanted to talk a little bit about the delicate balance of tending the wound and becoming sick and enabling of the wound, and talk about that in a particular example. And so I've mentioned that shame is a traumatic event because it implies a threat to our belonging, which is a traumatic event because it implies that we may not be safe in a context in which we are interdependent. And while money, in a practical sense, is very sociopathic, meaning people will sell you things that you need to survive whether or not they like you, whether or not they agree with your politics, whether or not they judge you. There's still an understanding that if we are shamed in some way, that we are dependent on, in a modern world, the cooperation and goodwill of literally thousands of people a day. You know, it just takes one person in 1,000 on any given day to swerve across the road and hit you, to shoot you, to distract you and send you falling off, a dangerous height, or violently rape or attack us. And it's important to remember that, in part to acknowledge just how beautiful we are, that despite our existence being predicated on the cooperation of millions of people over the course of our lifetime, we are still alive. And any one of those people amongst millions that we've encountered could have ended our life, and they chose not to. And so I'm exploring the area that helplessness plays in my PTSD, and how it's shown up for me today is over the last month I've asked my girlfriend not to volunteer and take the lead in being, quote, helpful. I've asked her to not volunteer help, not do anything that she thinks is helpful, not ask me if I want to be helped, but rather to cooperate and support me when I ask for it, and to otherwise let me take care of myself. And what this does for me is a couple of things. Number one, it gives me a sense of control. Number two, it gives me a sense of control of my state. So when I'm busy thinking about something and making plans, that's me doing that. And I do it very well. And if someone interrupts me, I go through a slight disorientation, and I have to kind of let go of what I was doing. Remember, I'm not alone. Go out. What's this other person talking about? Why are they asking this? And when someone is being helpful, so today she said, you need to buy some shoes, which was an echo of a comment I had made a few days ago. I said I need to buy some shoes. And I immediately felt defensive, because when I'm saying it, I feel in control, and it's me and it's my life. It also feels normal because I've lived alone and taken care of all my needs since I was 14 years old. And there's just been very minor incursions into that sovereignty. And so this has bought me a protection for this hurt, this confusion, this sense of being intimidated, and all of this kind of reactive, very sensitive emotion that's right beneath the surface. And so in our relationship, I've tried to protect myself from that by asking her not to be helpful. And I've tried to make it a little bit of a joke when she keeps crossing the line. I just say, don't be too helpful. And sometimes it's funny, sometimes it isn't. And so today she started by, we need to buy some shoes, or you need to buy some shoes. And then the next thing she said is, we should go to this store. And by that point, I'm feeling explosive, because on the defensive side, it's like, what do you think? I'm an idiot? I'm 42 years old. You don't think I know when and where to buy shoes? Nobody's ever bought me, shoes. I mean, this is, this feels like an invasion, number one. Number two, I feel hurt. There's a sensitivity. Number three, I feel ignored because I've asked not to be helped in this. This isn't helpful. It's distracting. I'm busy thinking about something in the bathroom, and she's starting to call in advice on shoes. And number four, I feel completely helpless because she will not listen. No matter what I say. I've said it probably 50 to 100 times in the last 2 months. Don't be helpful. Just cut it out. I don't want any of it. I don't want my feelings triggered, my attention interrupted, my thoughts disoriented, to have this explosive reaction under the name of being helpful, when it is the most irritating, annoying, painful thing she could possibly do right then. That's not help. That's ignoring me, stirring things up, reminding me how fragile I am. I mean, because I have to question why I'm reacting strongly, but it's reminding me how fragile I am. It's trying my patience. It's questioning, can I put up with this patience? I mean, is this relationship over? Because if you tell someone 100 times and they just keep doing it, that's going to get worse and worse and worse. So what's, do I have a future? Or is it just gone? Because I can't stand being ignored I can't stand being disrespected. I can't stand these intense, vulnerable feelings. And I can't stand my own critical, hostile, cold irritation as this builds. Because part of me feels explosively violent, and I don't have to raise my voice. I don't raise my voice. I don't have to hit someone. I don't hit people. But I can feel hostility and hatred and disgust and criticize someone in a way that's very cold, demeaning, dismissive, and makes them feel worthless. And I will do that if that's what it takes to defend myself from these helpless, powerless, shame, very tender, hurt, enraged feelings. First, the whole wound. I mean, it's a very deep wound because, of course, as an abused child, I was not helped and desperately asked for help. It's equally maddening when I'm quite bossy because I've well, for a variety of reasons, but it's I've not lived with someone. I've just had employees my whole life, and I'm very reactive to not being listened to, and I hate backlash. I just find it endlessly irritating when I tell one of my employees to do something for a complex set of reasons that would take more time to explain than for them to just do it. And they want to give me back talk, like, well, why don't you do it for this reason? As if I'm an idiot, again, as if I haven't been running this business for 25 years and don't know what they're talking about, but also know that, for example, if a client makes a specific request, even if it's an absurd request, and I've educated the client about the absurdity of it, but they say, go ahead, I want it anyway. Well, you do the absurd request as long as they're making an informed decision. And that's just the way it is. Your clients pay you to be of service, not to control them and tell them what to do. And so I'm having put up with a constant flow of back talk in these situations. I'm quite curt and abrupt at times, and I've got my defense ready because I'm tired with chronic fatigue, because I feel insulted by the back push, particularly when I'm paying someone hourly. I mean, it's not like I'm telling them exactly what I want them to do, and I want them to do that in that way. And I will be very happy, and I will take full responsibility if that doesn't work out. So I have this history of tiredness, irritation, which goes to a much deeper history of loneliness and invisibility. The loneliness and invisibility of not being listened to, not being heard, and being treated in ways that are very toxic for my own good, with no one wanting to listen to how I felt, how I feel, or what I need, which has generally been a great way towards well-being. And so I feel it's a very tender, painful area, that's started very young. And it is an aggravant anytime someone does not pay attention, does not listen, does not do exactly what I ask them to do. And then I'm left with the consequences of that, of course, because they don't want to take a pay cut just because they've cost me $50 by not doing what I asked and it has to be redone or something. It's irritating. And so I have a charge around this. It's very sensitive. And of course, I want her to stay out of this area and just not touch it. It's a painful wound. But she's oblivious. So she does touch it regularly. And she's completely affected by my irritation, by my disgust, by my rage, by my annoyance. Whether it's a silent rage, like I'm not going to even, it's affected by the thought. I'm not going to waste my time saying yet again, just cut it out. I'm going to just ignore you and you're going to get it one of these days. And this kind of energy in a relationship does kill love. It does kill intimacy. And so one of the questions that is an important and healthy question in this situation is, given that she can't remember, given that she doesn't have the self-consciousness to control her impulses, and given that I have this painful wound, and given that I protect myself with that painful wound, with hostility, with coldness, with criticism, at this point, now that we're 100 times into the wound, the first time I can quite calmly and gently say, please do not help me. Don't do anything to help me unless I ask. Can we have that be the understanding? I can do that very gently and calmly, and I can explain why. I have PTSD. I feel small. It's irritating. It is not helpful. Just cut it out. I don't care what your reason is. I don't care that you thought this and then you thought this and this and that, because you're not listening to me. What I've told you directly is, please do not help me, period, unless I ask. Now, why you think that if I've run my own life for 42 years, why you think that suddenly it's going to fall apart? If you, who know much less about my life, don't do this or that or the other, is a joke. There's no rationale behind this. And there's a very understandable rationale that I feel hurt, irritable, angry, pricked in this area when I am not listened to again by the person closest to me. It's maddening enough when my employees don't listen to me. But with them, I can be irritable and not feel particularly upset. If I've got a dunce of an employee who's just insisting on doing it, I get quite impatient. Shut up, do it. Do it. No, do it. And sometimes I have to grab their hand, move their hand over here, say, do you get this? This is what I want you to do. Is there anything that you can possibly be confused about? Do this now. Thank you. Get on with it. I'm disgusted with the level of unresponsiveness. But I'm also alarmed by the intensity of this and by the hostility. I understand it. I understand. When you've been ignored and had your boundaries pushed at your expense more than 10,000 times by more than 1,000 individuals who are perfectly clueless of their impact, don't care, aren't paying attention, and you're hurting every single time. Because it's not just this one time, it's part of a pattern. And it's not just a pattern, it's part of a very sensitive trauma. I understand why I feel this way. But I also understand why some people feel scared of me. I understand why I am not healthy for some people. Because, here's how this can fit in the most destructive way, and it fits this way to some degree with my partner. She's been shamed, criticized, told she's doing it wrong, and told that she's unlovable and unworthy as a human being. She has been treated like an animal by her family. So there's some part of her that feels profoundly unworthy because no one has shown her real love and respect in her whole life. Completely understandable. She's also shut down mentally because that's so painful. Because when no matter what you do or how hard you try, you are shamed, criticized, it's never enough, beaten, lied to, shamed again, humiliated, shouted at, beaten. You don't want to be present for that. And it does damage to the brain. And so she may not be able to track this kind of thing. Like, I'm good at this. If someone gives me a specific request, I'm exceptionally good at tracking it, respecting it. That's what I'm doing with my clients. That's why they pay me a lot of money. I ask a lot of questions. I take responsibility to track nuance. I do exactly what I say I will do. That's it. I don't know if her brain can do that. And it disturbs me in the way that is a pattern with trauma survivors being punished for the symptoms of trauma rather than helped out of them. That's evil, basically. You're traumatized, so you can't cope in this area. Like, I'm traumatized, so I've got this deep wound. So rather than helping me out of this deep wound, I'm ignored. I'm re-triggered over and over and over again until my rage, my impatience, my hostility, my boundary drawing. No, I'm not going to relate to you anymore. Goodbye, you are not in my life. Because I'm not going to be made to feel this way again and again and again and again. Because you either can't or won't give a shit about how it makes me feel. And so I don't know what the answer will be in this situation, but I see that it has many layers. On the one hand, I have an unhealed wound here that heals and feels loved and respected when someone sees me, honors me, respects the boundary, and this part feels loved. I feel gentle, soft, cared about, and it feels wonderful. Number two, not everyone can or will do that, either because they're self-centered in their own trauma or their own stuff and they just don't give a shit, or they don't have the tracking skill to really remember nuance like that. They just do their habitual pattern without thinking, whatever's the social norm, regardless of anyone says, and that's just pretty hopeless. It's and it gets particularly a joke when you tell someone something, they say they get it, they say they're going to do it, then they don't do it. You say, why the fuck didn't you do it? Not in those words, but that's the feeling. And they say, well, that's not what people do. And it's like, what the fuck does that have to do with it? That's not what people do. Did I or didn't I ask you not to do this? Yes, you said not to do that. Did you say you wouldn't do it? Yes. Well, what the fuck are you doing? Do you think I asked that for pure entertainment purposes? Do you think I don't know what I need and want? Do you think I asked you not to do it so that you would do it? Do you think I give a shit whether the entire world sticks red-hot swords into their chest every afternoon? I've asked you not to do that with me. And how the fuck am I going to feel heard if you not only don't do it, but then you come up with this crap that it doesn't matter because everyone does it? It's like, is that what we're going to do here? Every time you break a clear request and agreement, we're just going to go back to that's what everyone does, and so that's why you're not going to keep your agreement? I mean, is that, so, I mean, what kind of crap is that? You want me to lie to you just because everyone lies? I mean, that's bullshit. So, there's that bullshit. There's the wound and tending the wound. But then there's this other layer, which is that when someone is abused and traumatized, as my partner has been, she cannot think straight. And this is induced insanity from abuse. Insanity is just, is a gray area. It's not black or white. We're all crazy in some ways to some degree, and we're all sane in some ways. But she's had insanity induced in areas. When someone is irritated and critical, because this energy and this tone has preceded life-threatening trauma for her throughout her childhood. And I am a critical person as a way of expressing my terror in my trauma. And because, like most of us who have been abused, she was not abused logically. She was abused because her abuser was scared, frustrated, helpless, or angry, or she was nearby to be abused. That's about it. Not her fault. Nothing she could do about it. Nothing she could say. So there's no sanity around the abuse that she received. And when someone has been beaten and traumatized, regardless of the logic or sanity of doing so, the logic brain switches off and you realize that's not your way out. So that actually shuts down more, and you go into what is more of an instinctual appeasement, mitigation strategy. It has nothing to do with the incident or the facts, but has everything to do with trying to appease the abuser and decrease the abuse. So if I'm impatient or irritable, that activates that circuit for her. She shuts down her logic of, I agreed not to do this or whatever, and she just tries to appease, basically. But I'm not her abusive family. I don't want appeasement. I want to be heard, and I want my boundaries and requests respected, which she's not paying any attention to in her panic of appeasement in response to the trigger of the tone of my impatience or the tone of my irritation, which when you feel really powerless, when I feel really powerless and terrified and overwhelmed, being critical and intimidating is a way that offsets that. And if I'm alone and I'm grumbling and angry and blaming something just to feel a balance of, to balance out this powerlessness, it doesn't hurt anyone. No one takes it personally. No one's there most of my life. But if someone's there, then it starts to have impact. And then I have this crisis because I'm feeling this wave of grief or powerlessness from my past and stuff. And then I'm trying to get medicine for it in an instinctual way, which is often the internalization of the abuser. The critical energy that was there directed towards me is now internalized to kind of balance it out. And so this is the complexity of this dance, where she needs this, I need this. They are coping strategies. The coping strategies for managing the wound are in tension with one another. So if I was being truly loving with her, it's to see that what she needs is gentleness, reminder, validation that she will not be punished when she makes a mistake, be blamed up the wazoo for every little thing. What I need is nuanced attention and respect to boundaries so that I feel safe, that I will not be induced into helplessness, and that my needs and my feelings mean absolutely nothing to the person I love, because they're so self-absorbed with their own whatever, they're not paying attention to what I'm asking them. That's what I need. And we're not both going to get that. And so then the question becomes to disengage, or the acknowledgement that she deserves love and care, and I deserve love and care. So to start transitioning.